music podcast for kids. Jake Shimabukuro is an American composer and ukulele virtuoso. We had the pleasure to sit down and chat with Jake about his journey with the ukulele and music during his growing up years and throughout his incredible career. A truly amazing performer, composer, and super cool dude to chat with. Here is our fun interview with the one and only Jake Shimabukuro. We have a very special guest with us today on the Music Podcast for Kids, Jake Shimabukuro. Thanks for being on the show.
Aloha! Thanks for having me on. Super stoked to be here. I'm tuning in from Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii, out here where I was born and raised. So, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yes, absolutely.
Good stuff. So since we're a music podcast for kids, we always like to ask our special guests how they got started with music. So can you tell us how old you were when you started playing music and where your musical journey took you through your growing up years?
Well, I was 4 years old, and I started when I was a little kid. You know, I was born and raised here in Hawaii. So in the fourth grade, you know, everybody learns how to play the ukulele in elementary school because we learn a lot about Hawaiian culture and things like that. So playing the ukulele is a big part of that, you know, part of the class. And we spend months on that in the fourth, fifth, and sometimes even the sixth grade. But I got an early start because my mom played when she was a kid, and she learned it too in school. And so when I was about 4, she sat me down, put the ukulele. If you've never seen an ukulele, for those of you tuning in, if you've never seen an ukulele, this is a larger ukulele and it's a tenor size. And she told me to just put my finger right here, and I played my first chord, and I just fell in love with this instrument. And I've been playing ever since, you know. So, you know, I just feel very fortunate because, you know, I found something that I was very passionate about, you know, at a young age. And of course, back then, I had no idea that I would be a professional musician,
sure,
or whatever you want to call it. But so I never thought that I'd be doing what I'm doing today. But I'm so grateful, you know, because it's what I love to do, and it's what I would be doing anyway, you know, regardless if I could make a living doing it or not. So yeah, so I'm so grateful, you know, for my mom, you know, just introducing this instrument to me.
Yeah, that's cool. And did you, so like, as you progressed through school, did they have classes that you would take to perform ukulele, or is that something, because we don't experience that so much here. Like, we teach kids in elementary school to play ukulele, and then usually does it go further from that, Bruce? No, not really. Do they do that any further down there?
Yeah, so normally in the beginning, you know, like what my mom taught me, you know, just my basic chords, you know, learning just basic simple chords. That's kind of what they teach you in the fourth and fifth grade level. Right. And then you learn traditional songs, and they teach you how to sing them, and you're strumming the ukulele and singing these songs. But what happened in my case, after a couple years of learning the basic chords from my mother, she sent me to a very famous school here in Hawaii, and it's the Roy Sakuma. We just call it Roy Sakuma Ukulele Studios, but it's really Roy Sakuma's ukulele school. And I mean, he has taught tens of thousands of, you know, kids. And he was the one who first started the world's first ukulele festival. You know, they have ukulele festivals all over the world now. And last year they just celebrated their 50th annual, you know, ukulele festival. So,
cool.
You know, he was truly a visionary, and he learned from. I mean, there's kind of a lineage of players, right, who inspired all of the modern players here in Hawaii today. And it started with a man named Eddie Kamai. And Eddie Kamai was like he's recognized as the world's first ukulele virtuoso, you know, back in the 40s or 50s. And he was doing all kinds of amazing things on the ukulele that stemmed outside of traditional music. And then after Eddie Kamai, you know, he had a he had kind of the next person was Ota-san, who was my biggest inspiration, and he learned from Eddie Kamai, right? So that's that lineage there. And you know, Ota-san was the one who inspired me to play the ukulele, because I mean, he didn't sing, he just played instrumental music, but he did everything from like traditional Hawaiian songs to, he would do arrangements of classical pieces, he would do jazz standards, and I mean Japanese folk tunes. You know, so he was doing a whole bunch of different genres that no one, you know, thought was even possible on the ukulele, right? Then after him, his student was Roy Sakuma, and Roy Sakuma was the one who, you know, he's great. He is a brilliant ukulele player, but he opened up all these schools all across the state, and I was I was a student of Roy, so that's kind of the lineage there. And at the Roy Sakuma school, you know, we didn't just learn how to strum, but we also learned how to play melody and play single line melody. So that way, if you didn't sing, people could still recognize the song that you were playing.
And did they teach you how to tune them?
Tuning was a must. You had to learn how to tune. And when I was learning, you know, we didn't have these fancy electronic chromatic tuners. We had those pitch pipes.
Yes.
You know, so they had these pitch pipes made specifically for ukulele. So you would blow into the pipe, and you would get the A note, and you get the E note, and you'd kind of tune it to the pitch pipe. So I had one of those growing up, and of course the tuning fork, right? You have the tuning fork, and you can tune the first string, which is tuned to an A, and then you can tune all the other strings to that string.
So. And you have some bad news about your dog.
So my dog has fleas, right? It has kind of been
sorry to hear
something that I didn't realize how strange, you know, that could sound to someone, because I was born and raised here, and everyone says that, right? We would say my dog has fleas, but I'm not just say the phrase, but we would sing the phrase, my dog has fleas. So we would sing those notes to my dog has fleas, and that's how we would check the tuning, because in the early days, you know, there was no standardized way of learning the ukulele. I mean, a lot of times, you know, when I would talk to the old timers who would play, they didn't even know the names of the chords. So like, for example, here, I'll show you a quick example. They would use, they would basically make up their own vocabulary. So they knew this was a C chord, they would call this C. But then when they would go to the 4 chord, or the F chord, right? They would call this second C. And the reason they called it second C is because that was usually the chord in the songs. If they're playing a song in the key of C, that was usually the second chord. Of the song. So they would call this, second C, back to C, you know, second C.
That's so funny.
It was they had their own terminology. So back then, you know, a lot of them didn't know that this was a G note, and this was a C, like like middle C on the piano, and then you have the E above middle C and the A above that middle C, right? So they would just remember, you know, by ear, they would just remember da 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 da, right? And of course, somehow they came up with that my dog has fleas. They came up with that phrase, and I think it has something to do with the name of the ukulele, because if you break down the word ukulele in the native Hawaiian language, uku means flea and lele means jumping, right? So ukulele is really the jumping flea, or flea jumping. So I think, you know, that's probably where the flea reference comes from. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know that's for awesome. Sure. But, you know, but the ukulele was, it was, people have different ways of looking at it. You know, a lot of times and a lot of scholars will say that the ukulele was born. They use the word born in Hawaii because it was the result of a hybrid of 2 Portuguese instruments that came over to the islands, you know, from the Portuguese immigrants who came over here. It was the rajau and the machete. And the machete was a small little 4-string instrument, really tiny, right? That you could hold and play. it was the size of what the modern day standard size ukulele is today. But then there was also another instrument that was larger called the rajao, and the rajao had 5 strings. But the interesting thing about the rajao is it had the re-entrant tuning. So that was, it would start with a low string, and then it would get higher, but then it would jump down to a low string again, and then gradually get higher.
Oh, wow.
So the first 4 strings of the rajao, where it's high string, low, higher, higher, okay, minus the 5th string, which was another bass string, that's the actual tuning, the traditional tuning of the ukulele now. So you have the re-entrant where you have the high string and then the low, higher, higher, right? My dog has fleas. Yeah. But the rajao had one more bass string above this string. Okay. So if you think of the modern day ukulele, it's really the tuning of the rajao minus the low string, but it's the size of the machette.
Yeah. Wow, that's super cool.
That's fascinating.
Pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. So, you had a lot of success in Japan and Hawaii in the early 2000s. And during that time, one video that made a pretty big difference was the viral video of My Guitar Gently Weeps. Could you give us some background on why you made the video and how that went viral?
Sure. You know, so when I first started out, when I was, this was like, gosh, I'm ashamed to say the year because I can't believe it's been that long.
Right.
But so back in you know, the mid 90s, I actually had my first band, and it was a band called Pure Heart. We released several records that are out of print now, but you know, we basically performed in Hawaii. We did, you know, a bunch of traditional and contemporary, you know, Hawaiian music. And we would take famous songs and we would play them in a way that had more of like what we would call the island feel, you know, back then. So we would take songs like, you know, like Hey Baby, you know, hey, hey baby, right? Yeah. So we would take songs like that and we would just kind of reharmonize them or just change the rhythm a bit to kind of fit more of like the kind of island music we grew up listening to.
Yeah.
And so we had, you know, we had a good bit of success, you know, here in the islands. And then after that, later on in 1999, I started up a second band, and we started, and our lead singer, his influences were more like acoustic rock and, you know, folk singers, singer-songwriters. So we started doing it. It forced me to kind of branch out a little bit, and that's when I started getting a little bit more experimental with the ukulele, you know, because we would do these kind of like these classic rock tunes, right? And so then sometimes the natural sound of the ukulele didn't quite fit the vibe of what our lead singer was going for. So that's when I started incorporating more like effect pedals, you know, distortion pedals, you know, getting this kind of sound. You know, as opposed to just the right. So now I had access to different colors and just you know, different options, right? Depending on the song that we were playing. So then, you know, I started experimenting with that, and I thought that was kind of cool. And then in 2000, that's when I started branching out and doing more solo things. And then finally in 2001, I got my first major record deal, and it was with Sony Music Japan. So in Japan, you know, they've always had a great fascination, you know, with the ukulele and Hawaiian culture and traditional Hawaiian music. And in fact, Ota-san, who I spoke about earlier, you know, who's one of my heroes. I mean, he had such a huge career in Japan. You know, they just loved him, you know. So for me, it was always kind of my dream to like do concerts in Japan as well. Yeah. So I got my first record deal in Japan, was basically spending like 6 to 8 months a year out there doing shows. I had my own radio program. I was doing TV shows, commercials, and doing concerts. And I was having a blast because I love, you know, I mean, I'm a 5th generation, you know, Japanese American. So just connecting with the culture there. You know, was incredible. And then fast forward, you know, to 2004, 2005, I started having opportunities to perform, not just in Japan, but and Hawaii, but you know, in California and in New York. So the first time I got invited to New York, it was for it was like an Asian American kind of music arts festival. So I was a part of that. So I went up there for the first time. I did a show at BB King's. And it was so much, you know, I was just so blown away, just never been to New York before, you know, so I was just like so overwhelmed by the lights, the lifestyle. I mean, everything, it was incredible. So it was like everything I had seen on television, right up until that point. So and then while I was there was a couple of guys who did this. It wasn't really like a podcast, but it was like a little TV show that they would do, and it was called Ukulele Disco. And what they would do is they would just interview people who were enthusiastic about the ukulele. So they heard I was coming up to New York to do the show, and they reached out to my manager. It was like, oh my goodness, you know, we want to interview Jake, and you know, and it was interesting because at the time, I had no idea anybody knew who I was, right, outside of Hawaii or Japan. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's do this. And so we went to Central Park. We did a short interview, and then they asked if I would play a song. So since at the time I was working on this solo arrangement of George Harrison's While My Guitar Gently Weeps, because I'm a huge George Harrison fan. So I played that, and it aired on TV. I came back home to Hawaii. And then a few months later, a lot of my friends who were living on the mainland or going to school, you know, like in college, universities and all that, they called me and they were like, oh my goodness, everyone's talking about this video of you playing in Central Park. And so this is 2005, right? And back then, you weren't emailing videos to people, right? That was
right.
You really had to know what you were doing to do something like that. So they're like, yeah, I'm going to email you this thing, and just you know, I don't even think it was called a link back then. They're like, yeah, just click on this thing, or you know, I think you had to copy it and put it in your bar or something. Right. But anyway, so I did that. And then a clip from that TV show popped up, and I was like, oh my goodness. And back then already, you know, it already had millions and millions of views.
Yeah, wow.
And so it was really amazing. I was like, wait, I don't understand how people are seeing this. Yeah. But that's what really started this touring career for me. And after that experience, you know, I was able to tour with other bands and collaborate with other musicians, you know, people that I never thought I'd be able to collaborate with. You know, I know you've had Tommy Emmanuel on your show, and you know, he was one of the guys who kind of took me under his wing early on and took me all over Europe, all over Australia, and you know, I was like, oh, this is amazing. You know, Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, they were the first tour that I got to jump on back in 2005 after that video went viral. You know, Bela was like, man, we want to take you out on the road with us. I was like, oh my goodness, are you serious?
That's amazing.
So there I am, you know, I back in 2005, I'm like up there with the Flecktones and standing between, you know, Bela Fleck and Victor Wooten and just losing my mind.
It's
like,
amazing.
What is going on?
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's what kind of started all of this. And yeah, I'm so grateful, man. I mean, I remember having a little, I got to do something over at YouTube, you know, at their headquarters one year. This was a long time ago, you know, probably like in 2008 or 2009. And yeah, they were saying that, you know, that Central Park video, that was one of the first videos of theirs to go viral.
Yeah.
You know, I was just really, you know, at the right place, in the right place at the right time. Right. And, you know, George Harrison loved the ukulele, right? You know, it was one of his favorite instruments, and he loved spreading the joy and his love for the ukulele to people. And that's why I used to tell people, like, I think George Harrison up in heaven is like still using the internet to help spread his love for the ukulele. You know?
Exactly, right.
it was an amazing experience.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Cool.
And your teachers, of course, have been a big influence on you. And
yes.
It's kind of a two-part question. So a lot of our listeners are kids, and some of them might want to learn how to play the ukulele. So you also have a master class now. I'm actually working through your master class on Masterclass.
Thanks.
And nothing against any of the other folks that are on there, but you go really in depth and really teach, things you can really take away from that lesson instead of it just being just ideas. You've got hands-on, take this and practice it and work this out and give it your own twist. And I love that about your class. So
Thank you.
first of all, how did you prepare for the masterclass experience, that whole thing? And then on top of that, what's some advice you would give a beginner ukulele player as they get started on their ukulele journey?
Oh, well, yeah. First of all, thank you so much. I was a fan of that masterclass.com thing before I even got asked, because I remember one of my close buddies, he's a musician friend of mine. He said, he just seen Herbie Hancock on this thing called masterclass.com. And I was like, what is this? I got to go look it up. So I went online and saw it. And I was like, wow, I was looking through, the names that they had on that. I mean, they had just the musicians, like Itzhak Perlman, they had,
Steve Martin did a.
Oh yeah, Steve Martin. I watched that one. That was so brilliant, but they had like Danny Elfman and all these, famous movie composers. And
right.
So Hans Zimmer, right? He did one. But anyways, to make a long story short, I was like, man, I got to get on this thing because this is incredible. And my oldest son was really into magic, and Penn and Teller had one too. Oh, yeah. So I went all in. I subscribed, for everything, and I just loved it. I watched almost every class, that was available at the time. And since the time I joined till now, they've just put on so many amazing classes. But anyway, so I was subscribing for a few months, and then one day my manager calls me up and he goes, "Hey, have you ever heard of this thing called Masterclass?" And I was like, "Oh, how'd you know?" And so I'm like, "Oh yeah, I subscribe. I watch it all the time." He goes, "Oh, yeah, they want you to do one on ukulele." And I said, "No way!"
That's
"No
awesome.
way!" So he said, "Yeah." So I was so blown away, and but the process was incredible. I got to work with the team so closely, and they're brilliant. They're so good at organizing the ideas. So all I had to come up with was, just the concept and the ideas and the songs and the techniques and all the things that I wanted to teach or to demonstrate or showcase
Right.
and just kind of my goals for what the takeaways were going to be. And they were so good at helping me to organize everything, coming up with the cheat sheets and things like that.
Right.
And they made everything look and sound so great. When I arrived, it was in LA, and when I arrived on set, it was like they were shooting a Hollywood movie. There was like 50 or 60 people on set. They had makeup crew, wardrobe. They had they had a gajillion lights and people just kind of taking care of every little aspect. So it was just amazing to see how much effort and care and passion, that goes into all the different, just the whole series. So we shot mine in 2 days, and we'd get there in the morning, and we would shoot all day until like 5 or 6 p.m. And then I'd go back to my hotel, come back the next morning, we shot all day again, and I was so happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah.
So prep wise, it was, and of course for me too, I'd never done anything like that. So I was so nervous, and but they really helped to make me feel so comfortable, and I could just relax, and just they just wanted me to just be myself, and just be yourself, pretend all these cameras aren't on you right now, right?
Sure.
So but yeah, it was an awesome experience. And then and I'm sorry, and the second question was about,
kids who were thinking about playing
yeah.
the ukulele. How would you? What advice would you give them as they start out with it?
Yeah, so I always love to, for me, music is, I tell people that the instrument, I may have said this in the Masterclass, I'm not sure, but the instrument is just an illusion, so if any art form or anything that you're doing, right, you have to learn to, the art form is really figuring out how to be in touch with the things that are inside of you and what you're feeling and your own vision and your own creativity, and figuring out how to get that to someone else or to a mass audience or whatever, right? And that's the part. So like this, is really just the illusion, right? You have to create it inside of you first. So I always tell people, like, it doesn't matter what chord you're playing or what note you're playing, you have to feel that note or that chord inside of you first, right? So like before I play something, it's not just putting my finger here and just doing this, right? That's so mechanical, but it's about like, I wanna visualize, in my brain, I wanna hear that sound and I wanna feel that sound. I wanna know what my body is gonna feel like. So physically, mentally, and even, emotionally or spiritually, I'm invested in that thing that I'm gonna do, and it all just comes together. So when you play that chord, like I'm letting it like resonate with every part of who I am and my being, and I think that's the most important thing, so no matter what you're doing, and learning to not just it's not just about playing the instrument, and music is not just happening when you have your instrument and you're playing a song. Like music is happening when you're having a conversation with someone, music is happening in the way that you shake someone's hand, or the way you put your arm around a buddy, or the way you hug your parent or your child, or the way you treat people around you. I mean, it's all those feelings and that connection and all those things that you're experiencing. Like that's what you're recreating, or that's what you're doing when you're holding your instrument and you're playing your songs and expressing yourself and connecting with people, right? So don't just get so caught up in what you're doing, like right here, but really internalize and just express that. That's why I love watching when my kids were, they couldn't even play chords yet because their fingers weren't strong enough to hold the strings out, but they would hold it, hold the instrument, and they would just be because they'd be trying to mimic me, but like they're like, oh, I'm daddy, and I'm doing this. So but that feeling that they're having when they're doing that, doesn't matter what chords they're playing, or if it doesn't sound, what it sounds like. They are expressing a feeling and an emotion, and they're visualizing something in their head, and they think that's what they're doing, right? Yes. And that's what you can't lose. You don't want to lose that, right? Because we have that as kids. But then when we get older, we're like, oh, I got to be cool, or no, I can't, I got to do this, or I got to present myself a certain way. But if you can get back to that raw, like innocent, you're not even worried about what anyone else is thinking, and you just have something in your mind or inside of you that you're just trying to do, and you don't care what you look like, or you don't care what other people think. That's the part, that I had to relearn, because as I got older, I was like, okay, I'm missing something. But once I learned to reconnect with that side of it, the child, the inner child, I guess, in me, that's when things started to really change, and I felt so connected with the instrument, with the music, with everything that I was doing, with the people around me, and so we can't lose sight of that.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's super cool.
So I just realized I have paint on my forearm. I saw that in the camera. I was like, oh, shucks. I was just kind of doing some painting in the back there. So I guess awesome. I didn't wash up good.
So you've had obviously a great deal of success with playing the ukulele, but you also have a big emphasis on giving back to the community. So can you tell us about the FourStrings Foundation and the impact it's having?
Yeah, I used to have a couple of nonprofits before. The FourStrings Foundation was one. Prior to that, I had another nonprofit called Music is Good Medicine, and I just currently I don't have my own nonprofit right now, and the reason for that is because I found out that there are so many nonprofits out there that basically had the same mission that I had, or even better than I could have come up with on my own. So I started joining all of these other nonprofits. So now I sit on the board for several different music nonprofits, and I just and now I can use my resources and my energy to carry out the same mission, and be helpful to them. So we're not all trying to fight for the same, the same resources and all of that. And it just made a lot more sense to me, so that's been, that was a big epiphany for me at one point. And the nice thing now is that, I can extend myself to help, multiple nonprofits, and it doesn't always have to be music related, right? It can be, my wife she's a medical doctor. So now it's been wonderful to be able to support, some of these other nonprofits that help families, with children who have like lifelong illnesses, and being able to support them. I'm also a big supporter. With my wife used to be on the board for ASH, which stands for Autism Society of Hawaii. So being able to work with some of the students, and and just kind of and see how music really transforms their whole personality, and just especially the ukulele. And I think the ukulele, and I'm probably biased because it's the instrument that I play, but I don't, not that I know a lot of stringed instruments, but the ukulele to me is one of the few stringed instruments where you can play full chords with just one finger, right? So like, for example, the first thing I always teach kids when we play, the first chord I teach them is the C7 chord, because it's so simple. You can just tell them bottom left-hand corner. Put your index finger in the bottom left-hand corner of the instrument, right there. And that's your C7, which is the 5 chord of F. And the way I teach them F is I just tell them to just put your finger up one string. They jump it up. Now, technically, this is an F with an added G and an add 2 or an add 9, right? So you can, and as you know, with the 1 and the 5 chord, you can play hundreds of songs, right? So the first thing I always teach them is, okay, because we start with the C7, Beatles, love me do, I love you, right? And then if you start with the F, you can do, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream, right? Spider went up the water spout, down came the rain. So there's just tons of things that you can do. This is another one that the kids really love, and one of the other chords that you can play on the ukulele, it's the easiest chord is this chord, because it doesn't require anything with your left hand. It's just the open strings, right? And so, you can call this a C6, you can call it an A minor 7, there's various names for this open chord here, but we're going to use it as like an A minor 7. So I teach them the C chord, right? Because if you're at the C7, you just move up to the C, move up to the third fret, and that's a C. Okay, and the next chord is open, A minor 7, and next chord you're going to go to the F, which is just the one that we learned earlier, like that. And then the fourth chord is back to the A minor 7 again, right? So you strum each one 4 times, and check this out. You go right, let go, add the F, and let go, right? And that's the whole progression. And it's that song from Trolls. Remember that Justin Timberlake one, right?
Yeah.
I got this feeling
Oh, yeah.
inside my bones.
That's right.
It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just so simple.
that's
You know, kids are doing this. I tell them, this is the best chord because you can scratch your ear while you're playing. Right? Oh, my nose is itchy. I got that sunshine in my pocket. Got that good soul in my feet. Now, I'm not a singer or anything, but, you know, once we start doing that, it's like it doesn't matter how old you are, you know, you just light up and you're like, I'm playing the ukulele, right? I'm playing an instrument.
Yes.
And you know, so that's what I love about it is it's the you know, you get that immediate gratification. And to me, you know, when you can have that immediate gratification, it's inspiring, you know, because right away you're excited and you're you know, you're feeling that rush of like, wow, I'm actually playing, I'm actually doing it. And what that does is it automatically, you know, the first time you pick up the instrument, you are immediately, you know, you have this positive experience with it already.
Yeah.
Right? So now, you know, even though you were just doing this for 5 minutes, you're like, whoa, this is fun, this is cool. So when you see it again, you associate that feeling, that first, you know, what do you call that? That first impression, right? That first impression with a musical instrument now is very positive. It's fun. It's like, it's encouraging because you're like, I can do this. I'm doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's for me, it was like, oh my goodness, because I felt that, then I immediately, the second time I went to pick it up again, you know, I didn't associate the instrument with pain and hard work and commitment and like, you know, and tons of money in music lessons or anything like that, right? So I think that's one of the wonderful, you know, one of many wonderful things about the ukulele, and it's just, it's just, I don't know. I think there's something so. I don't know, something about it that just, I don't know, just brings so much joy, you know, when you just hear it, it's just, I don't know.
And that connection
but
too.
a lot of it could be, you know, I was just growing up in Hawaii and I would hear it all the time, everywhere. I mean, at every party, someone's strumming the ukulele and playing and so.
But hearing how you connect with showing the chords and everything reminded me at the end of your masterclass, the saying Okage Sama Day. And what does that mean? I think we're experiencing it now, actually, but what does that mean and how can that be applied in our musical life and even life in general?
So Okage Sama Day is a Japanese phrase that means, you know, I am what I am because of you. So honoring, you know, like how we were talking about earlier, you know, Eddie Kamai, right? The lineage of Eddie Kamai to Ota-san to Roy Sukuma, and then Roy Sukuma was a direct teacher for me. You know, it's honoring those in the past that it's like standing on the shoulders of those who came before you, right? You know, my success is really it's because of the people who provided that, you know, who provided this for me. And so then it ties into, like you were talking about, the whole community aspect thing or giving, you know, that whole feeling of giving back, right? Because everything that I have, I feel was given to me. I get to I get to reap the benefits of the ones who sacrificed for me, right? So it's that whole concept, you know, really hit home when I was a kid. And so now I'm realizing that, you know, well, I have to continue that, right? So it's not like, oh, I worked hard and I everything I have, I worked hard for it and earned it. No, you know, I mean, of course you can look at it that way because, you know, we work hard, but you know, so many of, like when I think about, because I'm a 5th generation Japanese American, right? So when I think of my great grandparents who first came to this country, now they worked hard and they sacrificed a lot, right? And so it's looking beyond just your own generation, right? It's looking beyond, you know, previous generations and how there was a long-term goal, right? So what I'm experiencing today was a vision that my great-great-grandparents had, that one day, you know, if not her children and not her grandchildren and maybe her great-grandchildren or maybe her great-great-grandchildren will be able to have happiness and achieve, you know, a kind of success, or even get educated, and, you know, be able to go to school and be able to get a good job, and, you know, be able to own a house one day, you know, like things like that, you know, things that they never could have, but they would sacrifice and work hard because they knew that, not for themselves, because they knew all this hard work would not benefit them, but they knew one day, you know, somewhere down the line, it would benefit the lineage, right? And so that's the whole idea of Okage-sama Day, and that's and to me that's so important. Right? Oh, I'm so sorry. And that's important because, you know, we're not, you know, it just puts you in a place of appreciation, you know, and just really truly being grateful for everything that you have. So
yeah, it's awesome. Well, Jake Shimabukuro, we've really enjoyed hanging out with you, getting to know you. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us on the Music Podcast for Kids. We wish you all the best as you continue to share the beautiful and versatile sounds of the ukulele with the world. So thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such a joy, and yeah, I just can I say a quick message to the kids that are watching?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
please.
Well, one of the things that I always like to say is, you know, to all the kids that are watching, you know, like, I just want to encourage you to just try a lot of different things. You know, find your passion, find something that you love. I started playing the ukulele, as you know now, from the age of 4, and, you know, and luckily, you know, that grew into the passion that I still have today. But for you, maybe something else. You may have a passion for medicine and you want to be a doctor someday, or a passion for teaching, you know, for education, you want to be a teacher, or a passion for photography, whatever it is. Or maybe you have a passion for communication and one day you want to have your own podcast like this, and, you know, and inspire kids all over the world. And, you know, whatever it is that you want to do, just, you know, study, practice. You know, my mom used to always tell me she doesn't care what I do in life as long as I strive to be the best that I can, you know, at it. And the last thing I want to say is be drug-free. You know, I've been drug-free my whole life. You don't need drugs. And yeah, and, you know, that's all I wanted to say. Just thank you so much for your time. You know, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Aloha.